Okay, when the Ukraine war started, Americans and Europeans said they were defending Ukraine from the evil Russian bear. They said it was about stopping Russia from taking the eastern part of Ukraine, Donbass, and those areas, and also protecting Kiev. And this guy was Man of the Year that year, Zelensky. Meanwhile, while Ukraine is losing this war, the U.S. is using Ukraine to fight uh, Russians in Mali by to fight Russians in Mali by killing Malians by giving drones and reconnaissance to terrorist groups in Africa to help them kill people in Mali and therefore undermine Russia, which is there helping Mali try to become a BRICS nation and move away from the West with uranium and things. So they're overstretching Ukraine. Ukraine's supposed to be defending itself against Russia over there, but now all of a sudden they're being used as a front for America and France to fight Malians. And now we can say, okay, Ukrainians are giving them drones, giving terrorist drones to kill people in Mali. And at the same time, Ukraine now is being used to send drones to attack Russian oil facilities. So what we're seeing here is the same old story. The war between Ukraine and Russia, I mean, Ukraine and Russia is an American proxy war where they're using Ukraine to try to destabilize Russia's oil supply through the drones and through luring Russia. America lured Russia to fight Ukraine because they hoped it would destroy Russia's economy. It wasn't because they wanted to defend Ukraine. And now they're using Ukraine to produce drones and to give them to terrorists to fight Mali. And they're saying they're doing it to weaken Russia. But all Ukraine is doing is being put on the chopping block as a slaughterhouse for America to diminish Russia, just the way that Israel is being used on a chopping block to diminish Iran, to diminish Syria, to diminish Lebanon because they want to control the oil in those areas. And now there's a blockade in the Middle East, which is hurting BRICS, hurting China, and hurting the world. So what we're seeing is that America uses proxies, saying that they're trying to help them and that they're trying to fight evil. But what they're doing is they're stretching them out because this is an energy war. So I'm going to go back to Ukraine. Ukraine's resources should not be spent while they're trying to defend their whole livelihood, and Russia is on the brink of destroying the whole country. But meanwhile, their resources are being used to fight another war in Mali, which France and America don't have the balls to fight. Same thing with Israel. Everybody says, oh, Israel's evil and they're attacking. Israel's getting pummeled by Iran. And Israel's economy is messed up because their young men are in war, fighting a losing war in Lebanon, fighting against Hamas doing genocide, and also fighting against Iran, while Americans sit from a distance and watch while Israel does the dirty work. So my argument is that Israel and Ukraine are actually not sovereign nations. They're basically proxies and puppets for an extension of the American government to do America's dirty work by fighting BRICS nations, China, Russia, Iran. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
If you look at Kiev, the war is purely, well, you might look at it as a struggle for independence and survival. But the way it is, Washington supporting Ukraine has historically served as a pragmatic tool to check the expansionism of Russia, without making it very, very obvious.
The U.S. funded a coup in Ukraine in 2014 because Ukraine was going to leave the EU and come close to Russia, and their president was Russian speaking. Russia and Ukraine had a war, and there was a peace treaty brokered by Germany. Russia now attacked and broke the peace treaty because the U.S. broke it by beginning to arm Ukraine again. So what I'm saying is that this is not about a war about nuclear energy or whatever. The U.S. and Europe broke the peace treaty by giving Ukraine weapons and telling Ukraine that they would put missiles there to point at Russia. So they provoked a war which they wanted to start because they wanted to put sanctions on Russia, and also they wanted to use Ukraine to diminish Russia's economy because Russia can't grow economically. BRICS can't grow economically if they're in the middle of a war. Same thing in Iran. Iran's oil and BRICS oil production has gone down by 40% because they're in the middle of a war. Sorry, go on. And my argument is that so Ukraine, this was never about defending Kiev. This was about starting a war, but using Kiev as the carrot, as the bait. Same thing with the war in Iran. Israel is just the bait. These wars are not meant to help Israel be a nation or to help Ukraine. They're actually destroying those countries by using them as the buffer. Then once Ukraine is done, the U.S. will now send Europe to go to war with Iran. No, not with Russia, but they first want to kill off the Ukrainians. Once the Ukrainians are done, Europeans will be the slaves, and then once the Europeans are done, the American government will start sending Americans to fight Russia. So, but what they want to do is get rid of the poor, get rid of the people they don't really care about first to try to drain Russia. Go ahead, Afala. Ukraine is being used as a sacrificial lamb. You may not agree with it or not. What are your
No,
thoughts?
I agree with you. They are being used as
Yeah,
a
but you're going to another point, which is not really relevant. Go ahead.
yeah, but basically the ultimate goal is to weaken Russia from expanding. I understand that. And that's basically what Washington is doing with all what they're doing right now. The motivation is to use Ukraine to basically to weaken Russia. At the end of the day, Ukraine gets weakened themselves and they don't have a choice.
Yeah, but if they're going deeper than that, they're using Ukraine as a slut because they're using Ukraine to give weapons to terrorists in Africa. You're not looking at the big picture. The topic of this show is that Ukraine is not a sovereign nation. It's just an American toy. What are your thoughts, Alex? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it does represent a high risk gamble, where a nation is fighting a desperate existential battle for its own survival on European soil is diverting precious military intelligence and technology into. Wait, is Mustafa still here?
I'm here. Yeah, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. And it's diverting its like resources miles away into the African like, soil. It's definitely being used as a desperate asymmetric front to bleed Russia's global footprint. And by
Yeah,
targeting the African corps mercenaries in Mali to cut off the gold mines and mineral wealth.
yeah.
That is funding Moscow's war machine back home. So, I mean, this strategy is backfiring anyways. I don't know if you saw, because by backing the rebels and factions linked to local.
Let me make a distinction. They're not rebels because rebel means you're from the same country. They're backing terrorist groups who are not Malians. You see what I'm saying? They're not
Okay,
backing rebels
yeah,
they're backing terrorists who are killing civilians. And you made a point that they're trying to stop funding for the war, but it goes beyond that. It's not They're not trying to stop Russia's war machinery. What they're trying to do is to stop Russia and China from having access to Mali's gold and uranium because Mali now said they're no longer going to give it away for free to France. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's not
yeah,
even about stopping Russia from funding its war because Russia is not funding its war through Mali's resources. But what Russia is doing is they have economic agreements with Mali to buy their uranium. So what I'm saying is that so what that they're using the excuse that they're having Ukraine to fight them for the war. Is fighting in Mali is not going to help Ukraine with their war because Mali is not the key to Russia's success. Mali is the key to getting that uranium for Europe. Do you see what I'm saying? So they're sending Ukraine on a mission in Mali, which doesn't even have any relation to the war in Ukraine. You understand what I'm saying? Go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah. I mean, ultimately, it is a bizarre and chaotic paradox where Ukraine, in its frantic bid to weaken its oppressor, it has allowed itself to turn um the Sahel into a secondary proxy battlefield. It's sacrificing its own like moral high ground long
Okay. So
term.
here's my view. The
Okay.
U.S. knew that if they help Ukraine and they antagonize Russia, Russia will attack Ukraine. The U.S. intentionally chose to destroy Ukraine so that they could cause Russia to spend its resources on that war rather than on economic war with the U.S. and the West. So what I'm saying is that the Ukrainian war was planned by Americans. What they did is let's use Ukraine to antagonize Russia. Then Russia will fight Ukraine. And then that way Russia will spend its money on war and not on economics, and the dollar will stay strong. So what I'm saying is that the whole point of this war is not for Ukrainian sovereignty. Ukraine is a slave of America. The whole point of the Ukraine war is actually to weaken Russia. And they're using Ukraine. Now, Afalabi, they're doing the same thing with Taiwan now. They're telling Taiwan that, Taiwan, you need to be free of China. We'll give you weapons. Then China will destroy Taiwan, and the U.S. will say, why are they destroying Taiwan? They want China to go to war with Taiwan so that they can drain China. So what I'm saying is that all of these wars are not about the sovereignty of the nations. They're about wasting the resources of other countries so that the U.S. dollar can still be strong. What are your thoughts, Afolabi?
Yeah, they're bleeding the Russian African corps abroad, basically. If you look at it, they're just
No. They're not bleeding the Russian African cause involved. What they're doing is they're trying to undermine Mali's government so that Mali crumbles so they can take their uranium. It's not about fighting Russia. That's the point I'm trying to make. But if they want to take the uranium away from Russia. Now, the Ukraine war is to bleed Russia. Do you see what I'm saying?
Oh,
All right.
So
Okay,
basically,
let's start.
yeah, so basically what I'm saying is I feel that the Western alignment forces Moscow to divert their resources and their attention so that their manpower can shift away from Europe, without risking a single NATO soldier. That's what I feel, really.
Yeah, it's a war. But once Ukraine is spent, they'll now start using the smaller NATO countries
Oh,
and sacrifice them. And then the final blow will be when American soldiers have to go and fight. So what I'm saying is that this is not about the Mali war is a separate thing because it's part of the war because there's uranium in Mali over there. And France and the US want that uranium. So they're trying to cause a regime change in Mali. The war in Iran is about taking over the Iranian, destabilizing Iran so that Iran can't be giving oil to China and Russia. So this is an economic war. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing.